and welcome to another rant of the week, or my random thoughts of the week, whichever one that I decided to call it ages ago. It's been a while since I did one of these episodes, and the truth is, I've had so much work piling up to my ears. I found it difficult to prioritize the time to actually make one of these videos. Now, the idea of these videos is they're quite random and rambly, and they're quite easy for me to make as videos, as blogs. This one is going to be a little tiny bit more structured. And the question of the day is, how the hell have Ford declined and where the hell the rot started? The easy answer is the rot started in the last 10 years when Ford decided to start cashing in on the reputation of their badge rather than actually making decent products. The quote that I have for you of the day is a quote I think that has been used quite a few times, but this one specific to football as an avid Manchester United supporter. Roy Keane once said a quote, "You're only as good as your last game." And as far as I'm concerned, Ford haven't been making a better car since their last one for a very, very long time. To start, let's look at the pretext. In the last 10 years, Ford has basically cut its workforce in Europe by 4,000 employees, and their sales have slumped 50%. You may ask what has caused this slight slump. Well, there are many different factors, namely some of these. Well, for instance, Ford's electric partnership with Volkswagen. Now, Ford at some point in the last 4 years decided to go into partnership with Volkswagen because they need to get into EVs, and Ford have been behind everybody else in that race. And it is a race because 2030 is the magic date set, and pretty much that's what you've got to achieve. And Ford, quite frankly, I think have been stuttering for quite a few years at the back end of the last decade, but they eventually agreed a partnership with Volkswagen, their biggest rival, which for me is just ridiculous. Their biggest rival, and they're going into bed with them, which I think is a really bad sign. That is the sort of thing that British Leyland used to do back in the day, or Rover, the Rover Group, Austin Rover Group, going into bed with your main rivals and ending up selling to BMW. I mean, that's the biggest warning sign ever when you're selling to your rival. Well, obviously, Ford are not selling up, but they're reliant on a rival for a massive part of their future cars. That can't be good. I mean, that's the context of that going forward. But nevertheless, they've decided to go with I think the modular electric vehicle platform, the MEB, I believe it's called. Volkswagen's MEB platform. And I'll go into detail about that in a second. But basically, you've got that, which is a risky subject, but it's something that they went into partnership with Volkswagen over 5 years ago, 4 years ago-ish. And the first car, the Ford Explorer, is going to be the first car of that partnership that Ford have as a product. Their first fully EV car in mainstream production. There have been electric cars before. The Ford Focus Electric of 2013, which sold in minute numbers. And I think there's only about 5 left of them, strangely enough. So there are 5 people out there with one of these on the road. Is just ridiculous. But the other challenge is the Chinese. This is not just Ford's problem, it's everyone's problem. The Chinese are now making their own cars, and they're making them bloody good. Yes, some of the quality is typically Chinese, but they're getting better and they're significantly cheaper. And when it comes to car sales, if you've got a car that's significantly cheaper in the same segment and class, the public are going to buy the cheapest. I'm afraid that is a smack on certainty. So you've got that as well. Also, Tesla. Tesla are wanting to produce a small electric EV specifically for Europe. Bad news for everybody there, because again, the brand snobbery of Teslas above all else wins. So you've got the Chinese coming in at the cheap end of the market, Tesla that will no doubt be coming in at the more expensive part of the small car market, and Ford, where are they? I mean, Ford's decline in Europe, you can attribute to several different things, like as I've mentioned, the slow the slowness that they have had to electrify their range when they knew it was coming, but they've been so slow to react, cutting production left, right, and centre with not a clear aim. I think they do have a clear aim now, but it's not a very good one. I'll put it that way. The other ones are limited mobility offerings, and quite frankly, that's a big, massive sales pitch, that is, and it's not a great one, to be honest with you, if you can't offer that sort of product. And an excessive amount of cost cutting. Cutting staff, for instance, and dealing with the short-term solutions. So i.e. Ford have been focusing on quarterly sales reports, not the long-term picture, just the short-term one, and trying to tweak things within the lineup to actually keep sales relatively at a decent level for the company in order to pay for all this electrification of their range. It has to be paid for somehow. And even though the Ford Fiesta is, has up until 2021 been their number one selling car, super minis, they don't make much profit. High manufacturing costs and low profit. They're not cars that are going to make manufacturers very much. They need to shuffle them out every couple of seconds, to be honest, to make something. Obviously, as well, getting rid of 4,000 of your workforce in Europe, probably more than that. They've been shutting factories left, right, and centre. Look at Bridgend, places like that. There have been a lot of job losses related to the fact that the internal combustion engine is going the way of the wind. Bridgend was probably a classic example of that. But you're also losing very skilled engineers. And when you're using skilled engineers and people who've been in the company for gazillions of years, that is experience you can't buy, and it takes years to accumulate. And I think that will also hinder their chances in the long term. The road ahead for Ford is preferably what it looks like with the Ford Explorer, which is an American name, is basically an Americanized vision of the future, whereas all their cars are going to have massive American hints to them. That does not bode well in Europe. It is like European cars being sold in America. I mean, how many European cars have done well in America, apart from Ford Focus Mark 1s? So, again, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? But let's look at some of the more details now. And let's actually start with what happened to one of their biggest assets, the Fiesta. It's between top of the charts for Ford. It topped the charts in 1990, and I think it claimed the prize for Britain's number one most selling car about 15 times, I believe. And between 2009 and 2020, it was top every single year. Best thing about it, the Focus was top of the charts from 1999 all the way to 2009. So since 1999, for 21 years, Ford was top. In fact, I believe it goes further. I think for about 47 years, something like that, there's always been a Ford at the top of the sales charts in the UK. That's just unbelievable domination. It finished in 2021 because the Vauxhall Corsa, the new latest generation of Vauxhall Corsa, trumped the Fiesta and kicked it into touch. COVID, did that have an effect? There were a few factors in this, but if you look at the stats, I think 2015, around 2015, there was 133,000 approximate new Fiestas registered. In second place was the Vauxhall Corsa with 92,000 registrations. So that's a whopping 40-odd thousand cars, or what, 45%? That's huge. That is incredible difference. So they were miles ahead. But then what happened was Ford got cocky. They let that car drive on. I mean, the Fiesta Mark 7 is a classic in the making. It's a modern classic coming up. Hugely successful car for Ford. Ford then changed the Fiesta in 2017. And then that's when sales started to dip a bit because people just didn't take to this car as much as the Mark 7. Maybe because it was a bit more expensive, maybe because it was a bit bigger, maybe just because people were starting to wane off Fords for that during that time. But it was definitely not as popular. And what happened as we approached 2020, just before the pandemic hit, is there was massive signs that super minis were going off the chart. There was a decline in super minis, and there was a huge take up in these mini MP3 or SUV crossovers. I mean, they tried it with this horrendous car, the Ford EcoSport. I hate them, absolutely hate them. It's a Fiesta on stilts, and they definitely tried the water with that car. And what they found out is, really sadly, is that people loved this car. They bought them in their drones and thought, brilliant. So we don't need to replace the Fiesta. We need to get rid of it and replace it with an SUV, because we've got electrification coming on. We've just signed this agreement with VW for the MEB platform. Let's get rid of the Fiesta and let's bring in a mini SUV. Oh yeah, they did that indeed with the Ford Puma. The Ford Puma being a very small crossover and pretty much a bridge between the Fiesta and the Focus, both of those markets, which they claim to have claimed both markets with one car. I don't think so, to be honest with you. Absolutely not. And I don't like that car. It's not a Puma. I'll show you a picture of a Puma. That's what we call Puma. That's a classic car, and it's a freaking good car. Based on the Fiesta, fun to drive, that's nothing to do. And this is what I'm going to say next, that every single manufacturer out there is very guilty about cashing in on their heritage. But there's nothing wrong with that essentially. But manufacturers just keep doing it all over the place, and now they've gone over the top about it. I mean, the Mini, BMW, cashing in on the Mini's heritage, the old Mini. They still refer to bits of the old Mini in their dialogue, in their brochures, in the styling cues. And it's just, what are you trying to be? The Mini has lost its purpose now. It's not a Mini, it's a joke. There's several other cars that have been cashing on their heritage. But Ford, I think, are more guilty than any other manufacturer because of the golden years of the mid 90s to the mid noughties, or even towards the end of the 2010s, where Ford were just dominant. They were making great cars. They had a fantastic lineup to suit all markets and all styles. It was a golden age, and Ford relied on that reputation, and they just used it to put the badge on some shocking cars like the Ford EcoSport. Certain cars, Mondeo Mark V, not as good as generations before. Focus Mark III, Mark IV, not as good as generations before, but not bad cars. They're good cars, but nowhere near as good. And I think Ford were relying on building cars that were good cars, but they're not excellent cars. And the difference between good and excellent cars is a massive, massive difference in the world of automotive manufacturing. And I still think that Ford cash in on that heritage today, but now it's come back to bite them on the ass because everybody's caught up now, and Ford have been in trouble for many, many years. And it has culminated in the Vauxhall Corsa overtaking the Fiesta in 2021 officially to go number one in the UK sales. And do you know why that is? I think you could level some of the blame towards the Puma coming out. So the Puma naturally stole quite a few customers off the Fiesta. But it's not quite as simple as that. The truth is there was a chip shortage, yeah. But some manufacturers prioritise cars, and Ford did not prioritise the Fiesta. They didn't prioritise the Focus either. That went even further down the sales charts. They prioritised the Puma, the Cougar, and the Ford EcoSport for a short time. They prioritised those cars above anything else, and a couple of other models. But generally, the Fiesta got left for dead. Production slowed down, the numbers went plummeting down. Ford had already decided that the Fiesta was going to be killed off by that point anyway. But the Vauxhall Corsa, of which General Motors decided, let's make an electric version of the Corsa, let's attract the old customers, the traditional customers, and bring them into the electrification era, but in something a little bit more homely and something familiar. And why did Ford not do that with the Fiesta? That is just it's a bonkers way of thinking. I mean, I'm not in sales or business, but I do know maybe what could be done that other manufacturers have done that have worked out. But I think it's a no-brainer if you're trying to attract people to electric cars that would otherwise be resistant to change, and people hate change. But General Motors, they did that with the Corsa, and it overtook the Fiesta completely. In fact, I believe there is a figure I've actually got right in front of me. I'm just going to search for it on my computer. But there was basically 41,000 UK registrations of the Vauxhall Corsa in 2021. I've just read it off my screen. And 6,000 of them were the electric Corsa E model. Now, naturally, that's 6,000 cars that Ford can't touch because it hasn't got a Fiesta electric equivalent. So that's why you ended up with the Corsa just zooming off into infinity. And it's been like that ever since. Bonkers. So you can see the decline of Ford is kind of relative to the decline of the Fiesta. It's almost the same sort of story. So yeah, we've got the COVID chip shortage, lack of prioritisation over the model for a start, slow electrification, and the cannibalisation of customers leaving from buying a Fiesta to buying some of their other models, or even leaving the manufacturer altogether. And I suspect a lot of people have actually left and ditched Fiestas for Corsas, or maybe even Corsa Es. And I'll tell you what, I know a number of people who've bought Corsa Es, but is it quite as simple as that? The answer is no. And this is a visual thing that I've noticed, and many people probably notice as well. So we've got a Mark 7 Fiesta in this picture, okay? Now let's have a look at a Mark 8. You see what I mean? Styling wise, the Mark 8 Fiesta is an essential smoothed out evolution of the previous model. So maybe Ford needed to make it a bit more different. It doesn't look very, it is a definite evolution, but it's not radical enough for people. And I think the problem is the current Corsa is an absolute radical car compared with the previous Corsa. And I think that change literally boomed the sales for that car. Ignore the Vauxhall Corsa E. I think people were attracted by a completely new, bold design. Ford played it safe. Some ways you can't blame them because the Mark 7 was still a strong seller and was still number one in the charts when it was replaced with the Mark 8. So can I blame them? No. But they weren't bold enough. And in business, if you're not bold and you don't take risks, you don't really reap the rewards, and they definitely didn't with this car. But you can see the visual difference between the two. Now, the facelift did give some more of a significant improvement, but it just wasn't enough. And the truth is, if you're at the end of your PCP contract with your Fiesta, and you've got the option of taking another one, the latest one on, so you've got a Mark 7 Fiesta, you've come to the end of your PCP contract, here's a Mark 8, and you think, well, is that it? I'm not going to really want to pay more for a car that looks just the same. Can we not have something a bit different? And that is half the problem. Is it a simple case of saying with the Fiesta and with the Focus, just the buying public's attitude had changed towards small hatchbacks? No, that's wrong. People, wherever you go, and it's not car enthusiasts, it's normal every day Joe Public, right? They want small hatchbacks. They want cheap, small super minis and hatchbacks that they can run. Some people just don't want crossovers and SUVs. In fact, there is actually now more of an argument against them than rather for them. I do think SUVs will go the way of the wind in about 10 years' time. In 10 years' time, it may have reversed itself. There needs to be more smaller, affordable cars because I can't see this being sustainable. And I can't see the sales being very good at all. So, no, I think Ford just played it wrong and Vauxhall General Motors played it right. And as this video goes out, the last Fiestas will be running off the production line in Cologne, which is a very sad day because it brings to an end a heck of a lot of manufacturing, almost over 16 million of them, something like that. It is really sad. And the Focus is going the way of wind as well. So it's sad that unfortunately these two great names are going the way of the wind, and Ford, by ditching its everything, for Fiesta, Focus, Mondeo, these are staples of British life, and I don't know what people are going to do. Are people going to get used to these new cars? It takes years. It takes utterly years. Yeah, okay, you know, the Focus was a new name when it came out, but it was such a good car when it came out. I mean, as I've said to you before, people hate change. People absolutely hate change within a Zenith. So manufacturers are very concerned about keeping things very similar. The Vauxhall Corsa E is a great example of keeping things at a low level but introducing small change. But my argument to that is Mark 1 Focuses, as soon as the Mark 1 came out, it was an instant hit. There was not one component in a Mark 1 that was designed in a previous car. I would say people are going to say IB5, MTX75, Z-Tech engine, TDDI engine. Yeah, okay, but that happens in every car. The Mini was a clean sheet design like the Focus Mark 1. The Focus Mark 1 is up there with the most brilliant clean sheet designs ever. Rover P6, clean sheet design, amazing car. Didn't share any components that has gone before. Obviously, there'll be some similar parts that may have been carried over, but very few little bits and pieces. You know, something like interior doorknobs and all that sort of thing. Interior lights, you know, may have been swapped over from previous cars. But the Mini, the A-Series engine, it didn't start life in the Mini. It'd already been out 6 or 7 years before in previous cars, the Austin A30 in 1952. So there you go. You know, that car uses transmissions and engines that basically came from other different cars. The A-Series being a very different beast than the Mini, though, with its gearbox in the sump situation. But apart from that, on a Focus Mark 1, it was a clean sheet design. It sold, it was radical, but it sold well because, well, it was just such a good car. When you design a really good car that's attractive and it ticks all the boxes and it's the right car at the right time, it will sell like hotcakes. So, no, I don't buy the point that maybe Ford have been not bold enough. They haven't. They have not been bold enough at all. They've been too slow. And now we're going down the end of, well, this MEB platform, which I'm going to talk to you about now. All right. This is a picture of the VW Group MEB platform. It is a modular car platform for electric cars. It is developed for Volkswagen and its subsidiaries. So we're talking about Audi, Seat, Skoda. And obviously now Ford is a partner. So they will be using that in a couple of their cars. We've already got the Ford Explorer, which is the first car to use this modular platform. And then we're going to have another car, which is yet to be disclosed. But there's strong rumours that Ford are now going to bring back another name, Capri. I might come up with some swearing words in a bit, but I'm just going to take a breather and just breathe. Because you know what I'm going to say next. It's not going to be an electric two-door coupe. Oh no. Because this is going to be a crossover. Because all their cars are going to be crossovers. They're going to wreck another name. So they've done it with a Puma. They've done it with a Cougar. Well, it's spelt differently. Now they're going to do it with a Capri. This is really bad. And from what I can see about the MEB platform in general, though, is that it has been used in quite a number of different cars. And this includes the Audi Q4 e-tron, the Audi Q5 e-tron, the Cupra, the Cupra Born, the Ford Explorer, which is coming out this year, obviously it's been launched. Certain Skodas, VW ID 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 7, which is going to come out. So, you know, there's a lot of cars that within the group that are utilising this platform. And do I think it's good? Yes. I do believe in modular things in this world. I think the cost of manufacturing something, my sofa is actually a modular sofa from IKEA. Basically, all the cushions can be detached and move around, and you can add more pieces to it if you want. But it's basically the same platform, so the same framework, but you can have different variations of it. And there is a lot of scope for this in car manufacturing because of the sheer costs that everything costs in manufacturing these days. And modular platforms do keep the price cheap, but that is only if you and me see the benefits of that. Because you know for a fact, they're not going to make the price lower or more affordable. They're just going to charge the same frigging high price, but cut their costs low down to make more profit. I mean, don't get me wrong, businesses are there for profit. They're not charities. But I would want to see the results of that as a consumer, the positive aspect. And right now, cars are too extortionately expensive. They have to come down. It's as simple as that, because no one's going to continue buying new cars. It's getting to that point where virtually everyone now is moving to PCP lease deals because they can't buy it outright. Nobody can. I don't know who buys a car outright these days. It's all on lease and finance. I don't think that's sustainable whatsoever these days. In terms of technicalities, the platform will, as standard, have a rear electric motor. And that electric motor, with its one-speed gearbox, by the way, both of them weighed in 90 kilograms. Wow. That's the weight of an all-aluminium engine on average, just the engine. And this is both an electric motor and gearbox. And it has, I think it produces some stupid amounts, I think 310 Newton meters of torque, something like that. I can't remember what the kilowatts of power, but the engine is produced in Germany. The motor components are produced in Germany and some in China, but mostly in Germany. And there's two plants that are going to produce this electric motor, and they're going to produce 1.4 million electric motors potentially from 2023 onwards. Quite a big projection there. And on many other applications, particularly the bigger crossover SUVs that this is aimed at, particularly like the VW IDs, you will have a front motor that will work some of the time. I think the front motor develops about 550 Newton meters, but it will only work when required to improve the actual efficiency. So I think the motor at the front is more of a three-stage AC induction motor rather than a permanent magnet brushless motor. But that's quite interesting. And presumably it increases the handling and the 50-50 weight distribution as well. It produces that. So all good benefits there, really, honestly. And the production numbers so far are quite interesting. 878,000 vehicles have been produced with this platform already in the last 3 to 4 years. I think production started roughly in 2019 with the ID3, and then it's moved on from there. So Ford have got access to this platform and are going to use it in, well, the Ford Explorer and a couple of other their cars. I suspect this partnership may last for a few cars until Ford can possibly make their own, because I cannot see how Ford can sustain themselves comfortably as a company when they are relying firmly in the back pockets of the VW group. That's not good. I mean, it's like anything in the car world now. All the manufacturers, they're all in the same company now. I've lost track of which manufacturers are aligned with which manufacturer these days. Ford, luckily, is not in bed with anybody really these days. But they are now partners with VW, and I can't see this being a good thing. I really can't. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. They're cashing in on their heritage. They've let models go that they shouldn't have let go, to be fair. They haven't even tried to keep a small Super Mini in their lineup. They just think it's not worth it for the small profit margins, the manufacturing costs of converting a Fiesta to an electric vehicle in the short term, because eventually probably they would get rid of the Fiesta. If they made an electric version of the Fiesta, they'd probably get rid of it. I think the intention from General Motors is that the Corsa E, would just be a step towards a full electric car, and then when it becomes full electric, is it going to be known as a Corsa? Maybe not. I mean, the Corsa E is a full electric car, but the point is, it's a converted internal combustion car, which is basically you've got the normal Vauxhall Corsa with obviously the petrol and diesel engines, and then you've got the E, which is just a converted version of that. So the next generation will be fully electric, and there will be no compromise on the structure of that car. Whether they decided to keep calling it Corsa is another thing, but it will look very different the next generation, which will be quite interesting. But I'm not really into Vauxhall Corsas, but what they've done kind of signifies what Ford really should have done, but haven't. I mean, as a point in case, let's have a look at the new coming Ford Capri, which is now, it will be the second car to use the MEB platform coming forward. And this car, we've got sort of a couple of pictures to go on. We've got the two-door coupe look. We know that it's going to be a little bit more different to what we see in the pictures, but on the face, it doesn't look too bad, but it will be a little bit more bigger than what this picture depicts. And to me, with those headlights at the front, it just looks like an Americanized interpretation of what a European Ford should be, to be honest. And it looks like a Dodge Charger. Does it not look like a Dodge Charger with those twin headlights at the front? Because I think it does. I don't think that's a good mix. American cars are never sold well here, and if you think we love American cars, we don't love American cars. It's just a small group of car enthusiasts in this country that love American cars. They will import them from America. Mustangs, they've been importing left-hand Mustangs for years and left-hand drive American cars for years. But that doesn't mean that the buying public are going to enjoy these cars. Americanization? Oh, that's risky. Is it bold? Well, it's risky. Is it bold? Not sure about that. We've got very different tastes for America, no offence. But the Ford's chief European designer, Amco Lennox, if that is how his name is produced, he came up with a quote which I found quite interesting. He says, retro designs aren't moving us forward. It's always about total new interpretation. That's what makes it interesting. It's an interesting quote because if we're talking about totally new interpretations, using a retro name is not the way forward. You need to call this car something else other than Capri, because some people don't know what a Capri is, which might help in some respects, but those who do know Capri, you're just rubbishing an old name. It's not ideal, and I think if you're going to create a new interpretation, make it a new name, make it something quite interesting. This quote is also very confusing from Lennox. The public loves that we're bringing nameplates to new territories because they tap into a unique perspective that nobody else has. What's new about that? A lot of other manufacturers have brought back names in the past and put them into different markets, and I found out that actually they don't really last and don't sell as much as what they want. I mean, General Motors tried it with the Vauxhall Viva in the last 10 years. And it's okay, but it hasn't really sold in the numbers they wanted it to. And they thought it would sell more by bringing back a name. And to be fair, the Vauxhall Viva does stand to its actual own heritage. It is a small, little car. So, yeah, maybe that car's probably a bit more true to itself than what this new Capri is essentially going to be. That's a really silly quote, that. And I think to finish off this episode, we have got one final quote from Lennox that, quite frankly, is very risky to say. Electric car design language for us automatically came with simplification, cleaning it up, making sure we get not only the bold proportions and stance, the language is much more simplistic, but with that it almost feels more expensive, more premium, more approachable as well. So we're not doing aggressive cars here, we're actually doing cars that you can love easily. Is he a chief engineer, or is he just the big whip, the big boss at the top with these ridiculous quotes? I'm sorry, I've got a bit of brain fog at the moment. So just wait a second. Yeah, that took a while to sink in, that did. Ford, expensive premium. Well, actually, we'll ignore the expensive bit for a second. Ford and premium. These two things don't come together. Ford has never been about premium cars. So at some point they have decided as a company to take the direction of higher, more expensive SUVs aimed at a premium market. So they're ditching their customer base and creating a whole new customer base, a whole new brand, whole new car company. Whatever Ford was known for in the past, it's ditching. Fiesta, Focus, ditch it. Anything to do with the old Ford, we're ditching. They obviously made this decision ages ago. And they're going the same way as a lot of other manufacturers in trying to become more expensive. It hasn't worked for some of them, won't work for Ford. Ford is not a name that you would ever associate with a premium brand. You're putting this brand to compete with manufacturers like JLR, Jaguar, Land Rover. That's a premium brand. Their cars are not put together particularly well, and they're not designed particularly well in some respects, but they're a premium brand. And you're putting Ford against that sort of competition. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to associate Ford as a premium product ever. It's a shame, because they are extremely good cars when Ford put their mind to it. The Ford Focus Mark 1, the Mondeo Mark 3. I would say the Fiesta Mark 4, Mark 3, Mark 4 and Mark 5. The Mark 1 Fiesta as such as well. These are all great cars because they were designed well and they were at the right time. But this is something else. Is it going to work? I don't know. I'm going to leave that thought with you. Ford's decline over the last 10 years. Fiesta as an example of their decline and why they've decided to go down this route. They're taking a big, bold move. As I said, business, you've got to make bold decisions. And they're making a very bold decision by turning Ford from an everyday man's car to a premium SUV all-electric brand. This is not going to fare well, I fear. Good day.